Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Ben Novack Jr.? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background in this case. I'll move to the timeline of the crimes, then offer my analysis. Ben Novack Jr. was born in 1956. His parents, Ben Novack Sr. and Bernice Novack, were extremely wealthy. For many years, they owned the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami, Florida. Now, in looking at the way the name of this hotel is spelled, one would think that it has a French pronunciation, but having lived in Florida for a while, I know that it is in fact pronounced Fontainebleau by people who live there, although I'm sure there are other ways who people outside of Florida could pronounce it. The Fontainebleau is an iconic upscale hotel that opened on December 20, 1954. It has been designated a historic landmark. It's been featured in many television shows and movies, including the 1964 James Bond movie Goldfinger, The Bodyguard in 1992, featuring Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston, and a 2002 episode of The Sopranos. Ben's parents consider themselves to be among the elite and deliberately position the hotel to attract celebrities and wealthy guests. When Ben's father owned the hotel, the name Fontainebleau did not appear anywhere on the outside of the building. One manager would later say that if a person didn't know what it was, they didn't belong there. Ben Novack lived in the hotel with his parents. They stayed in a 17th floor, 4-bedroom ocean view apartment. When Ben was an infant, he was wheeled around the hotel in a stroller. It had a sign on it which read, "Do not touch." Ben was mostly cared for by a German nanny. He was naturally left-handed, but she forced him to become right-handed. He developed a stutter around this time. As Ben grew up, he lived a life of luxury. On his birthdays, his parents would throw him lavish parties. One year, his parents even commissioned a portrait of him on the beach. In 1968, Ben and his mother moved to Fort Lauderdale. A chauffeur would take him back and forth to an exclusive private school. In 1970, Ben started working at the hotel. He reported directly to the head of security. Ben had a fascination with law enforcement. His father arranged for him to spend some time with the Miami Beach Police Department. He was allowed to ride along on patrols and spend time with detectives. Ben's father rewarded the police for this indulgence by allowing several officers to moonlight as security at the hotel. In 1973, Ben applied to the Miami Beach Police Department. He would later graduate from the academy and become an auxiliary police officer. He had to work 2 10-hour shifts each month. Officers described him as reckless, impulsive, and overly enthusiastic. He was not well liked in the department. In 1977, the Fontainebleau Hotel went into bankruptcy, and Ben's father lost control of it. A real estate developer purchased it for $27 million the following year. Ben Novack's father died in 1985 at the age of 78. Ben started his own convention business and became a millionaire. He was able to do this because of the contacts his father had developed. In 1991, Ben married a woman named Narcy. She had worked as a stripper. She was considered to be manipulative and unrefined by many people who knew her. Acquaintances of Ben were surprised that he would be interested in somebody like Narcy, but they would later say that Ben appeared to genuinely love and care for her. Narcy quickly adapted to a luxurious lifestyle. She was not shy about spending a lot of money. She had a daughter named May Abad from another relationship. For at least some of the time, May lived in a guest house on Ben's property. In June of 2002, Narcy allegedly committed a very serious crime against Ben Novack. She disabled the alarm system in his residence and allowed unknown assailants to enter the house and commit a robbery. Ben was tied up for 25 hours. Amazingly, he did not follow through with charges against Narcy, even though there was substantial evidence that she was guilty. For instance, she returned the stolen property to him. Ben was fired from the police department after this incident. They were embarrassed that he would not set a boundary with Narcy. Ben had a number of affairs when he was with Narcy, including one with a woman named Rebecca Bliss, who Narcy found to be particularly threatening. Rebecca was an actress in the types of movies where apparel selection is not as important as the absence of apparel. Ben was with Rebecca for 2 years. He even moved her into a condominium in Fort Lauderdale. There was talk of divorcing Narcy. Narcy had signed a prenuptial agreement which indicated that in the event of a divorce, she would receive $65,000. Considering that Ben was a millionaire, this is a small amount of money compared to what she normally would have received. Now moving to the timeline of the crimes. On April 5, 2009, Bernice Novack was found dead in the garage of her Fort Lauderdale home. It is believed that she had died the day before. Multiple bones in her body were fractured. The police found blood spatter in just about every room in the house and inside of her car, but somehow they concluded that she died from an accidental fall. Their theory was that she fell getting out of her car in the garage and then, I guess, repeatedly fell throughout the house before finally returning to the garage and dying. I guess the police were unfamiliar with the concept of gravity. Interestingly, neighbors had seen 2 men casing the house not long before Bernice died. Just over 3 months later, on July 12, 2009, 53-year-old Ben and 52-year-old Narcy were staying in room 453 at the Hilton Rybrook Hotel in Rybrook, New York. Rybrook is north of New York City. It's near the New York-Connecticut border. They were there running a convention as part of Ben's business. At 6:54 a.m., Narcy spoke on the telephone with one of the hotel workers. There was a problem with the seating at the event. Narcy then left the room and went downstairs for breakfast. She can be seen on video surveillance going downstairs. Narcy returned to the room at about 7:45 a.m. She used her hotel keycard to gain entry. She said that when she entered the room, she found her husband dead. The police were called to the scene. Here's what they found during their investigation. Ben had been bludgeoned and strangled. His hands were tied behind his back with duct tape. There was also tape on his legs, just below his knees. He had been gagged, and his eyes had been removed with an edged weapon. There was no forced entry into the hotel room. A gold bracelet with Ben's name on it was the only item missing. Narcy denied having anything to do with Ben's death. She said that she was downstairs when he was murdered. The police checked the hotel keycard records and found that no one had used a keycard to enter that room from about midnight until 7:45 a.m., when Narcy's key was swiped in the lock. Narcy suggested that perhaps she did not close the door when she left the room. This explains how one or more assailants made entry. 2 days after Ben's murder, Narcy chased her daughter May with a crowbar around Ben's Fort Lauderdale house. The police were called. May agreed to leave the house. The police believed that Narcy was a pretty good suspect, but they did not have enough to charge her with Ben's murder. They were not aware of any physical evidence that connected her to the crime. It was clear that she didn't kill Ben personally, but she may have hired someone. 10 days after the homicide, the police received an anonymous letter written in Spanish. The letter indicated that Narcy and her brother, Cristobal Veliz, were the killers. The police paid Cristobal a visit at his home in Philadelphia. He invited them to sit at a table. They noticed Western Union receipts on that same table. When he left for a moment, they examined the receipts and made note of who was receiving money. One of the payees was a man named Alejandro Garcia. Surveillance cameras from the Hilton Rybrook Hotel had captured Alejandro and a man named Joel Gonzalez walking around on the property 2 days before Ben's murder. Eventually, both men confessed and testified against Narcy and Cristobal. They said that Narcy left the hotel door open for them. They entered and bludgeoned Ben with weights before strangling him. Their story was corroborated by the fact that at 6:39 a.m., on the day of Ben's murder, Narcy called them on a burner phone. Alejandro also admitted that he killed Bernice Novack by beating her with a pipe wrench on April 4, 2009. She did not die of an accidental fall. Rather, Narcy had her killed. Both Narcy and Cristobal were convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The prosecution believed that Narcy knew that Ben was going to divorce her, and killing him and his mother maximized the amount of money that she would inherit. Bernice had to die first so that her wealth would transfer to Ben. When Narcy killed Ben, his wealth would transfer to her. Now moving to my analysis. Ben Novack had a very unusual upbringing. He had everything that he could want, except the attention of his father and appropriate socialization opportunities. He became fixated on the Batman television show. As an adult, he amassed the second largest collection of Batman memorabilia in the world, including a replica of the Batmobile. When he went to private school, his stuttering was recognized by his peers. They described him as different and standoffish. He really didn't fit in. Academically, he did very well. He was described as intelligent. After taking the job at the hotel, Ben became even more intolerable. He would push people around, fire people without cause. Many people found him to be difficult to get along with. He was arrogant, condescending, obnoxious, self-centered, demanding, aggressive, and had a sense of entitlement. Ben wanted to be a police officer. He often acted like one, or at least the way he thought a police officer should act. He would frequently hang out with police officers and try to maintain them as friends. Not long after receiving his driver's license, he would drive around Miami and report to the police anything he considered to be unusual, including road signs which had been knocked down. When Ben's father lost the Fontainebleau Hotel, Ben was devastated. It was part of his identity. However, he was able to use his father's contacts to achieve success in the convention business, so his luxurious lifestyle continued. Ben was active in a number of casual romantic relationships. He was into BDSM and had a specific interest in amputees. Ben did not seem to grow out of the narcissism which had developed when he was young. As an adult, he was described as a loner and unpleasant. The relationship between Ben and Narcy was characterized by violence. They were terrible to each other. After the 2002 robbery allegedly perpetrated by Narcy and people she hired, the police repeatedly warned Ben that Narcy was extremely dangerous. They advised him to get a restraining order, a divorce attorney, and to get away from her. Ben initially went down the road toward divorce, but then the couple reconciled. Ben made it clear that he really enjoyed BDSM sex with Narcy and did not want to lose that. He recognized that Narcy was dangerous, but they were going to go to marriage counseling, so he believed everything would be okay. Now taking a look at Narcy. Narcy had a genuine contempt for Ben Novack. Not only did she order the hitman to remove his eyes, but she stayed in the room when he was murdered. She jeopardized her own alibi to direct the homicide personally. Just like Ben, she had no idea how other people perceived her. Narcy was an obvious, dangerous, and reckless assailant. Here are a few examples of how she was a poor criminal. To establish her alibi, she stood in a hallway at the hotel right in front of a camera. There was no clear reason she was standing there. She was kind of moving around her bags in an aimless fashion. Narcy told the police that after she entered the room, she could tell that something wasn't quite right. Considering that Ben had been tied up, beaten, and there was blood spatter all over the room, I wonder what part didn't seem quite right. Narcy is practically Sherlock Holmes, a master of observation. Narcy also said that Ben may have died of a heart attack, not one induced by the beating, like just a regular heart attack. What does she think happens during a heart attack? Did she believe that a heart broke into his room, tied him up, beat him, and strangled him? Like she literally thought that a human-sized, convicted felon heart attacked him. Narcy tried to escape responsibility by suggesting that her daughter, May, was the perpetrator. She implied that May wanted to get her hands on that Batman collection. It's like Narcy just could not empathize with people. She didn't understand people well enough to know what their motivations would or would not be. If Narcy had not been arrested, it appears as though her daughter was the next target. Alejandro Garcia had a picture of May in his pocket when he was arrested. Now moving to my final thoughts. I think Ben and Narcy used each other. They were both narcissistic, antisocial, aggressive, and self-centered. Ben wanted sex, and Narcy wanted money. That was the foundation of the relationship. Really, that was the entirety of the relationship. Eventually, Ben was able to secure another source of sex, but Narcy did not have an alternative to gain money. She developed a plan to have Ben's money without the inconvenience of having Ben. Those are my thoughts on the case of Ben Novack Jr. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis to be as intriguing as the world's second largest collection of Batman memorabilia. Thanks for watching.